The city has already shifted through empires, revolutions, rubble, and reconstruction before this night arrives. A Baroque court on sandy ground, an industrial capital of smoke and rail, a shattered plain of brick dust, a divided grid of concrete and wire. Now it is late in 1989, and Berlin holds its breath under a cold sky while its most famous barrier still stands. For a few more hours, the wall is intact. The Brandenburg Gate rises first in the frame, a stone proscenium caught between two systems. Floodlights wash the columns in pale bands, the carved figures above reduced to silhouettes against a low, clouded ceiling. In front of it, the wall runs like a pale, scarred strip, topped with a smooth cylinder that catches the light. On one side, a broad, almost empty avenue stretches back into the dark. On the other, a tighter grid of streets and low buildings presses close. A few distant figures move along the sidewalks, small against stone and concrete, their footsteps absorbed by the open space. Here, the wall itself is the main structure, a continuous line of poured concrete panels, watchtowers, cleared ground. The death strip is a muted expanse of raked sand, anti-vehicle obstacles, metal fencing, all flattened under the wash of sodium lamps. The air carries a faint tang of cold metal and damp earth. High above, cables and signal lines run parallel to the barrier, a quiet geometry of control. The wall does not curve, it bends in hard angles, asserting a straight logic over a city that once grew in irregular streets and courtyards. Across the Spree River, the division becomes a matter of water and light. The river slides under low bridges, its surface broken by reflections from office blocks, warehouses, cranes. On one bank, a more modern skyline of glass and steel rises, windows forming a grid of yellow squares. On the opposite side, older brick facades stand in deeper shadow, rooflines uneven. A patrol boat moves slowly along the dark current, wake barely visible, engine a low vibration under the hum of distant traffic. The river, which once connected factories, markets, ports, now doubles as a border. On this street near Checkpoint Charlie, the architecture narrows the frame. Mid-rise buildings from different eras line the roadway, pre-war facades with ornament worn smooth by time, post-war blocks with flat fronts and regular windows, newer structures with sharper angles and cleaner surfaces. The checkpoint infrastructure interrupts the street's natural flow. Barriers, small booths, lighting masts, painted markings on the asphalt. Lettering on signs collapses into bands of contrast at this distance, more pattern than message. A few vehicles idle or pass through, their exhaust briefly visible in the cold air. Overhead, streetcar wires and traffic lights form a suspended web. At the edge of Alexanderplatz, the Fernsehturm dominates the night, its concrete shaft rising cleanly from the square, disappearing into low clouds. The sphere near its top glows with a muted metallic sheen, dotted with points of light marking observation decks and technical levels. Below, the square is a broad, open plain of stone and concrete, broken by low planters, transit entrances, rectangular volumes of surrounding buildings. Trams slide in and out, interiors lit, movement tracing the lines of the city's electric grid. Up to this point, the rhythms of divided Berlin, work, commute, surveillance, routine, have settled into something that feels stable from a distance. Across the Tiergarten, the city's central park lies as a dark mass, tree canopy absorbing much of the scattered light. Paths cut through the foliage in faint pale lines, occasional lamps creating small islands of visibility, branches, benches, emerging briefly from the gloom. Beyond the trees, the outlines of government buildings and embassies form a low, solid horizon. The park softens the soundscape. Distant engines, the faint clatter of trains, the occasional siren, all filtered by leaves and damp soil. The wall skirts this green space, its straight edge visible where it meets open ground, a manufactured line against organic growth. The S-Bahn and U-Bahn systems, running above and below, stitch the divided halves with separate threads. Elevated tracks cross roads on steel bridges, riveted beams catching stray light. Underground platforms breathe out warm air through vents and grates at street level. Trains enter and leave stations with a regular metallic rhythm, doors sliding, motors rising and falling in pitch. Some tunnels, that once connected the whole city, now end abruptly at sealed walls. Others have been rerouted, creating loops that serve only one side. It is a transport network that remembers unity in its layout, but enforces division in its operation. It is a city wired for continuity, even as every cable and corridor is routed around a fracture that cannot last. Here, in the residential districts of Prenzlauer Berg and Kreuzberg, the consequences of that fracture are written into brick and plaster. On one side, late 19th century apartment blocks stand in long rows, courtyards enclosed, facades patched and weathered, stairwells lit by bare bulbs behind frosted glass. On the other, similar buildings show different repairs: brighter paint, newer windows, occasional modern additions on rooftops. Streets end abruptly at the wall, where once they would have crossed into neighboring quarters. Cul-de-sacs of cobblestone and asphalt terminate in concrete, fencing, cleared ground. From here on, the barrier that has defined daily routes, property lines, sight lines, is hours away from becoming a relic. Across Potsdamer Platz, the void left by earlier destruction is still visible. What was once a dense intersection, traffic, commerce, light, is now a wide, underdeveloped expanse, partly open ground, partly low structures and temporary installations. The wall cuts through it, watchtowers and lighting masts alongside, turning what had been a crossroads into a quiet, controlled zone. The ground bears traces of older foundations and tracks, lines in the earth hinting at former streets and rail yards. Within decades, this space will fill again with towers, glass, and new grids. But on this night, it remains a pause in the city's fabric. At the edge of the city, near the outer checkpoints and Autobahn links, the division scales up to the landscape. Broad highways approach the border in straight engineered lines, lanes marked by reflective paint and low barriers. Overhead gantries carry lighting and sensors. Nearby, low administrative buildings cluster around parking areas and inspection zones. Beyond the last pools of artificial light, fields and forests begin, outlines soft under the night sky. Trucks and cars move through in measured intervals, each vehicle a small unit passing between two systems that still insist on their difference. The night holds, and the wall stands, but the structures around it, tracks, roads, cables, river crossings, are already prepared to reconnect what they currently divide. In archival terms, this is the final intact frame of a particular design for Berlin, captured just before its central feature loses its function. The city will not pause. It will simply absorb the change and continue to grow over it, as it has done with every previous layer of stone, timber, wire, and concrete. This is one moment in a longer archive of cities shaped by time.